Blizzard conditions likely tomorrow, severe weather, snow, and ice today, and all of that making way for a bomb cyclone likely next week that could bring big ice and snow totals. Welcome in, everyone. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful Saturday out there and a very active day it'll be with severe weather, flooding, snow, ice. Really, we're going to do it all today through much of the eastern U.S., and that's just the beginning of this storm, folks. Tomorrow, we continue the impacts. And then next week, making way for another storm system, this time further south with snow and ice potential, even major nor'easter potential. By the time we get to Thursday, this one could ride up the coast and bring very high snowfall totals. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications. Comment, let me know where you're watching from and how much snow or ice you've seen so far. Or if you're getting rain, let me know if you're running into any flooding concerns. Really, again, all types of weather out there. So would love those reports. That helps me kind of make my forecast as well as I compare the reports to maybe what we expected was going to happen. Also, thank you to the new channel members that have joined. You kind of see the list here. These are our Tier 2 and Tier 3 members that have decided to join. Also, a little bit of a delay on when you do it compared to when I find out. So if you're in that tier and you haven't or you don't see your name on the list yet, it'll come. Don't worry. But definitely thank you to you folks. Alrighty, with that said, let's go ahead and dive on into the data. A lot to talk about in today's video. So what you see next to me, good old-fashioned, old reliable European computer model showing that winter weather potential and severe weather and flooding potential. There's storm number 1, and then here comes storm number 2 by next week. That one potentially an even bigger deal than today. And trust me, today is one of the higher impact storms we've seen so far this year. So the pattern is just loaded for, definitely a rough stretch here for many folks. Unless you're a snow lover, then maybe this is exactly what you want to see. But unfortunately, going to watch for some of that snow to get ruined by ice for some folks here that may be wanting to see the good stuff. Alrighty, so taking a look at satellite imagery, well, it's definitely picking up. I told you yesterday we were going to start to see some brighter colors and already just absolutely torrential rainfall rates right here. You see these very bright reds and oranges. Those are very high up clouds. Those are producing plenty of rain through what we call the Wegener-Bergeron-Vendeisen process, just good old-fashioned meteorology term for it's making rain. And all that rain falling down to the surface. Now, this is also telling me that the storm is beginning to deepen, it's beginning to strengthen, and we'll likely see more of these colors kind of push up into the northeast throughout the next day or so as this storm strengthens and even extend back southward towards Louisiana, Arkansas, as we expect severe weather potential this afternoon, including a tornado threat. So really, again, just active stuff, but you can see it on satellite getting its act together, and radar imagery lines up pretty well here. Just a mess in the eastern and central part of the country. We'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit for you. We've got snow up into Michigan, into Iowa, portions of Nebraska. We've got an icy, snowy mess in Ohio, portions of Indiana, into West Virginia, Pennsylvania. Again, let me know what you're seeing out there. Would love to hear those reports on what exactly is falling on the ground in places like Cincinnati, Columbus, Pittsburgh, where you're kind of in that icy mess. Further south, Bowling Green, Louisville, back down to Paducah and into the Memphis area. Heavy torrential rain becoming a concern. Flooding will be a problem today. You just got to be prepared for it. River flooding, flash flooding, any type of flooding you can imagine. Yeah, you see all this heavy rain, it's not going anywhere. That's the problem. Just going to kind of train over the same areas, and we could see more than half a foot of rain in places, folks, just from this one storm system. So obviously, that's enough to cause big problems. Now, our current alerts map here, obviously also beginning to fill in. We've got all sorts of colors. The pink, winter storm warnings, the purple, winter weather advisories, and then some of these kind of blue colors you see mixed in. These are winter storm watches where they could be upgraded to winter storm warnings if they see fit. Now, outside of there, the kind of green boxes you see, this is for flooding, right where I told you it was going to happen. We've already got flash flood warnings through portions of Tennessee and Kentucky. That'll likely expand this afternoon. And then you see all these kind of brown, kind of beige and kind of Dijon colors in here. These are wind advisories. This storm, it's going to crank up, folks, and as it does so, that wind field is really going to kind of expand and deepen, and that'll be a problem for anyone in the boxes, but even further north, an even bigger concern through Vermont, New Hampshire. we're going to potentially see big power outages. We're going to get a lot of ice and snow. You get this strong wind on top of it. Yeah, that's a recipe for big time issues. And then also blizzard-like conditions possible out of it in the northern tier of the Northeast, and especially if we have any kind of friends watching up here in eastern Canada, you're definitely going to see at least blizzard-like conditions, if not full-blown blizzard conditions, as we go into tomorrow, as the storm deepens and pulls up into the Great Lakes region. So definitely, kind of all of our maps definitely showing an active scene for this afternoon. Now let's kind of talk a little bit about why that is. Why is this storm really just, not in such a good mood here? It's Valentine's weekend. You think maybe it would have been a little bit nicer. Well, not so much. A big trough dipping down south. That was kind of always the storyline, and continues to stay the storyline. We'll move it ahead into time, folks, kind of starting as a bit of a neutrally tilted trough. That tells me it's kind of a middle-of-the-road strength trough. But what begins to happen, folks, as we go throughout this evening, overnight tonight, and here we go waking up tomorrow, notice how the overall orientation of this starts to kind of tilt back a little bit. That is a negative tilt in meteorology, and what that really does is increases the advection into the storm system. So that means the cold air and the warm air around the storm that are wrapping through are kind of moving quicker. That's obviously increasing the wind speed and deepening the pressure of the storm, and also increasing the lift. See all these bright colors? This is all lift in the atmosphere out in front of this trough. Due to that divergence above the storm system. That's why we're getting all this heavy rain, heavy snow, heavy ice in some places, severe weather threat. We've got very strong winds right above the surface as well. That's helping to fuel these storms. And all that works on through the East Coast by tomorrow afternoon into the Northeast. And then I think by overnight Sunday into Monday, we begin to calm down. But then we'll kind of talk about this map again. We're going to come back to it for our potential East Coast storm next week, and really just southern tier storm as well by next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So don't forget this map. We'll be back on it in just a moment. But before we get there, let's go ahead and break down the storm system. Let's time it out for you. This is about 9 a.m. Eastern time, so probably a little bit after this video is getting uploaded. And you can kind of see the general mess continues. We've got heavy rain through Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas. Severe weather threat still relatively limited at this point. But as we go through the afternoon down south, that warm sector I have circled is going to begin to really ramp up and kind of get juiced, if you will, with some thunderstorm fuel and just incredible amounts of wind shear. To the north, a kind of quick-hitting shield of snow working through Pennsylvania. I think Harrisburg State College up towards Altoona, into the Scranton area, going to see a quick burst of snow. You can see that happen here. Even Philly, likely going to see a little bit of snow at onset during this afternoon. Mostly rain by that time. In Pittsburgh, we could see a little bit of ice as well this morning and afternoon into the Shenandoah Valley, then changing to rain by the afternoon. We'll keep on moving it ahead. We'll pause right here. This is about 7 p.m. tonight. At this point, the severe weather threat really amplifying. So this is really about 6 o'clock Central Time. Notice this low pressure. I mean, it went from about 1,010 millibars all the way down to nearly 1,000. That's already a 10 millibar drop. And because of that, you're seeing this very strong squall line down through Louisiana into Memphis, moving through Little Rock this afternoon into northern kind of Mississippi here, and out in front of it, hard to see, but a couple little isolated supercells are possible, and that's what we'll need to watch for high-end tornado potential on any little cells that try to get going. Could cause big problems by the afternoon. Now, at that point, the winter storm's really just cranking up into the Northeast, Vermont, New Hampshire, into the Adirondacks, even New York City, seeing a burst of snow this evening. Into Boston, Concord, I think is how we say it, right? Not Concord. I'm a Charlottonian, so I'm used to Concord, North Carolina. I think y'all call it Concord. Tell me if I'm wrong or right in the comments. I always like to read those, but you can kind of see the snow beginning. Now, move it ahead even further into time, and that rain, snow, ice line pushing northward. So we've got a bit of an icy mess already here through the Catskills back down into portions of Connecticut, Rhode Island, beginning to change over to rain in Long Island, New Jersey, Philadelphia, still dealing with a severe weather threat and flooding threat down south this overnight tonight about midnight or so. And another thing to note, look at the back end here. See this little area of snow? This is what we call a deformation band in meteorology. Basically just an area behind the low pressure that we've got separating winds above us, and that's leading to this increase in precipitation, and oftentimes this can overperform. So watch it this afternoon. very easily could, or this evening, I should say, and overnight tonight, could become a bit of a surprise kind of snow event for some folks on the back end of the storm. You may think you're already done and not quite be done yet with the snow. Now, here we go into tomorrow morning, and this is when I'm really concerned about ice. Notice this area of kind of that pink and that purple that just gets locked into western Mass, up through the Hudson Valley, into southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire. That could cause big problems. Again, a lot of ice, a lot of wind. That's a recipe for power outages. Go ahead and prepare for that now. So you really should have prepared already. I've been telling you about it for a couple days now, but if you haven't yet and you got time today and the weather's still nice enough up here till this evening, go get some batteries or fuel for the generator or whatever you might need, because I do think power outages will be a big concern. Also tomorrow morning, this is 7 a.m. I mean, check out this squall line in the Carolinas. If you're down here in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, go ahead and prepare for strong gusty winds. And I'll throw a bone to my local folks here in the upstate, kind of my stomping grounds here and where I grew up. If you're anywhere along I-85 tomorrow morning, go ahead and prepare for a couple tornado warnings. We've got a receding CAD boundary, as we call it. You folks know what that is. It's that very cold air at the surface. Places like Pickens, Spartanburg, Greenville, Travelers Rest locked in the cold. But just south to you in Lawrence, Anderson, probably going to be in the 50s up towards 60 tomorrow morning. And that creates a lot of vorticity and shear along it. And 9 times out of 10, it produces a couple tornadoes when we get this set up in the early morning hours. So prepare for that now. Just tell you ahead of time. Could get a couple tornado warnings tomorrow. If not, then awesome, that's great, but definitely consider that to be a possibility. Then we go through the afternoon. Check out the deformation band on the back end of this thing, now down to 980 millibars by late tomorrow morning. We've got some blue back into Ohio, up through Detroit, into eastern Canada, and all that snow still ongoing in Maine, northern Vermont, New Hampshire, still an icy mess into portions of Massachusetts, up towards the Adirondacks. All rain for the I-95, I think, from Boston down to New York City and Philly by this point in the storm. Now, early on, again, those places starting as snow, but eventually transitioning to ice and then rain, so on and so forth. Also, during the early afternoon, late morning tomorrow, could see a severe weather potential down into coastal South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia as that squall line continues pushing through. Again, folks, just a tremendous amount of wind energy. The question will be thunderstorm fuel or instability. Is there enough to kind of pull that wind down to the surface or to kind of get a little bit of vorticity and rotation for a tornado potential? Also not out of the question come tomorrow morning and afternoon in that region. Now, we'll keep it ahead. Back in deformation band doing its magic, producing some snow in Ohio, back up into Canada, into the northern northeast. We've got ice, we've got rain. Just the mess continues tomorrow afternoon. And this is when ice could become a big concern for folks in the down east areas of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. Notice what was once snow, now changing to ice, and just a lot of it. And at the same time, 970 millibar low. I mean, folks, that is a strong storm with that much ice right next to it. I know I keep saying it, power outages, power outages, power outages, down trees on the roads, all sorts of problems tomorrow afternoon in that region. The good news, begin to clear out by overnight Sunday, but to the north, seeing blizzard conditions through the St. Lawrence River Valley of Canada, and even probably there into northern Maine, and on the backsides of northwest flow snow. Don't be surprised to see some snow showers into the northeast, back down into Snowshoe, and potentially as far south as the Smokies. And you can see our next storm trying to get going back out towards Nebraska. All right, let's take a breath, right? That was kind of crazy. Well, what does all this mean? Also, I think is a pretty fair question to ask. Well, I'll go ahead and tell you what it means. Here's the severe weather forecast. This afternoon, a level 3 out of 5 threat from Memphis, Meridian, Jackson, back over towards Monroe, Pine Bluff, Hattiesburg, near Mobile, Alabama. And that does include the threat of a couple tornadoes, a 10% hatched risk today. That means in that kind of shaded in area in the yellow, we're going to run the risk of significant tornadoes, meaning EF2 or higher strength are possible. And it'll move through these areas kind of again west to east. So right now kind of into the central Arkansas area by this evening, getting into northern Louisiana, into kind of the hatched risk, and then overnight moving towards Birmingham, Huntsville, Nashville, Montgomery, Atlanta, and then by tomorrow morning, getting into the Carolinas, where we do have a small tornado threat, one up into kind of Virginia Beach, Raleigh, back up towards Elizabeth City, Kitty Hawk, and then another area back down into southern Georgia and the Florida Panhandle. But I will tell you, again, do not be surprised right here into this area of the Carolinas, the upstate I-85 corridor back towards Charlotte. A couple tornado warnings tomorrow morning, not out of the question, or at least gusty winds at the very least. I think will be a concern in that region. So that's a severe weather threat, obviously one that we need to keep a very close eye on. Other threats we need to worry about, unfortunately, here include the threat for severe flooding or flash flooding, excessive rainfall. Yeah, level 4 out of 4. This is the highest risk they can issue in the pink from Paducah back down towards Memphis into kind of west central Kentucky here. Go ahead and prepare for flash flooding today. That'll be a big concern. And unfortunately could kind of steal the show from the severe weather and the snow. Water is one of the #1 killers in the United States in terms of weather, flooding obviously being the main cause of that. So be prepared for that. Could be a big time concern today. And then that gets us to the snow threat. This is the latest forecast from the National Weather Service. Now, this is from earlier this morning, really about midnight last night they issued this. So any snow you've gotten since midnight to now, subtract from these totals, but a lot of this still to fall over Michigan. I mean, check out these totals, folks. We're talking more than a foot of snow into portions of eastern Michigan there along the kind of shoreline there into the thumb, and definitely could be quite impactful. Also going to get wind on top of this, so it's going to be blowing around. We'll see problems from that. Still snow to come, likely into Wisconsin, Iowa. And then, like I said, watch that deformation band potential right into here. Could add some totals in here. Could overperform in some of these regions with that potential. Just be aware of it. Again, that would be overnight tonight into tomorrow. Sometimes they do a little bit better than the models show, so someone could get a surprise couple of inches. But definitely a pretty solid forecast here from the National Weather Service. And then we move it east towards the northeast and talk about problems. We've been talking about that flooding threat. Let me show you the latest European model. Look at the Euro forecast for freezing rain. I mean, we're talking ½ an inch to nearly an inch of it in western Mass, southern Vermont, New Hampshire, around '1/4 inch to ½ an inch into the down east areas of Maine. I mean, folks, this would be a crippling ice storm for a couple of days. And like I said, I know I keep mentioning it, but I think it's important. Put wind on top of this. Problems. Okay, just go ahead and expect the power outages. The travel concerns. The Euro here, obviously a pretty reliable model, but even if I show you another model, here's a GFS, sure, slightly lower on totals, but still not great. The Canadian model, high-end ice storm. The NAM model, high-end ice storm, and even the Mesoscale Canadian has a high-end ice storm. So going to be a problem. Go ahead and expect that, and then we add the snow on top of it. And, we've got all sorts of issues. So going for about ½ a foot to a foot up into Vermont, New Hampshire, into northern Maine, into the Adirondacks. I think that's pretty fair. Now, you'll notice a pretty sharp gradient right into here from Boston back over to the Hudson River Valley. I think that's an area of about 3 to 6 inches. You're going to snow for a while. You will change to rain, though. So when I say 3 to 6 inches, do know that that'll fall, and then kind of the rain will start to melt it a little bit. Back down towards New York City, probably an inch or two on the front end with that front end thump. Philly, maybe about an inch or so on the front end thump, probably even less than that. But definitely, again, I think a pretty solid forecast here from the National Weather Service, and one that should verify pretty well. All right, so now let's really take a deep breath. That's today's storm. Pretty crazy, all sorts of active weather happening out there. But let's talk about next week. I think next week could be just as crazy, if not more, for some folks here with this upcoming storm system that has bomb cyclone potential, meaning this could really deepen quickly and move up the coastline, and that's what we'll be watching for. Now, I'm going to pause it here. This is overnight tomorrow. This is our upper level map. By the way, for the members who are tier 2, it's called upper level supporter because I love some upper level maps. So I figured that'd be a fun name for that one. And we love our 500 millibar. I think it obviously does a great job of telling the story here. And, to be a good weather forecaster, it's best to start top down in the atmosphere generally when forecasting. And that's how we're going to forecast next week's storm. So here we go. This is the latest European model. Here's the storm system that's going to be ongoing tomorrow. You see all that energy in the northeast. Well, another big kind of component on the map that's probably jumping out at you is up here. We've got an area or a pocket of cold air up into Canada, and the question will be, how does this energy kind of pull that down? The more it pulls it down, the further south we're going to see snow and ice come next Wednesday. The kind of less it pulls it, the less cold air we're going to have in place. The European pulls it pretty significantly. So notice, see how that big northern piece of energy gets kind of stretched out and kind of pulled towards the northeast? That sets a stage for high pressure to kind of create some cold air damming down into the Carolinas, Virginia, maybe as far as North Georgia. That might be pushing it a little bit, but again, it's all going to depend on how much that northern cold air gets pulled down by our weekend storm. The European, again, really stretching that vorticity out and pulling that convergence that's creating high pressure towards the eastern U.S., and that would lock in more cold air. Some of the other models don't do that quite as much, and that's why we see some of the differences that I'm about to show you now. I'm going to start with the GFS. GFS has been a little bit of the Debbie Downer of the models on this storm, still showing snow and ice, just for less people and less totals. So we'll start it out here. This is overnight Monday. Here we go Tuesday morning. Winter weather developing into Kansas, Missouri, back down into Oklahoma through the Ozarks. Nice little shield of snow on the latest GFS here. Gets into Kentucky, southern Illinois, Indiana trying to get some snow out of it. We've got some ice as well near Little Rock and Memphis. Then the storm kind of quietens down a little bit. Still some snow there, but not a huge event for Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, into Ohio, more of a minor event. Then the storm hits the East Coast and kind of begins to ramp up a little bit. Now, latest GFS run gets the snow ice line as far south as Raleigh and Greensboro. Keeps Charlotte in the rain, keeps South Carolina in the rain. Stay tuned for the Euro, though. It's going to look different. And then all snow through Virginia and kind of the DMV area. Now, as this is happening, you'll notice the storm down here beginning to strengthen a little bit. You're starting to see that L, it says 1,012 millibars. As I move this ahead, that's going to get to a smaller number. And if you don't know, the smaller the number on a pressure, the stronger the storm. So just like a hurricane, a 950 millibar storm is stronger than a 990 millibar storm. Same thing with these storms, they're just not quite that strong. So we'll move it ahead here. Notice now on the GFS, wraps cold air in on the backside and gets a full-blown ice storm into Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro. We've got snow into the DMV. Still mainly rain for South Carolina on this model run. But I'll tell you, the trend has been further south with that ice line on the GFS. And I'll go ahead and sound the alarm now. I'm becoming concerned for a big ice storm in the Carolinas specifically come later next week, around this Wednesday timeframe. This is Wednesday night on the GFS. Move it ahead a little bit further into time. The storm bombs out, tries to pull up the coast, and does just a little too far away for big snow on the GFS model. European model. This one, old reliable, one of the better models we have, and has been really sounding the alarm as well for big snow and ice potential. Here we go, kind of beginning back into Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma. We've got also an icing event out this way. I just mentioned the Carolinas, Little Rock, down through maybe Oklahoma City, areas back towards Memphis. Watch for ice as well. That could also be a concern for you. Snow to the north towards the Ohio Valley, rain to the south towards the Gulf Coast. Keep it ahead here. Same thing. We've got some snow into Tennessee, Kentucky, into West Virginia, Ohio, southern Indiana, southern Illinois. Not a huge event there. I think one of those classic 2 to 4 inch snow events, so moderate for southern standards. But granted, earlier this year, Kentucky saw nearly a foot of snow, so this wouldn't be all that big of a deal. And then watch what happens. Now, starts as rain in areas like Greenville, Spartanburg, probably even Charlotte, but then we get some of that classic evaporational cooling to work its magic, and we change to an ice storm along I-85 all the way down towards the Georgia line. I know you see kind of rain here in Pickens, Oconee County. I would go ahead and imagine that's probably ice, just given climatology. So you would expect a kind of a skinny regime of ice from I-85 north, from Raleigh, all the way back down towards the Georgia state line. Snow in the mountains on this run, snow in Virginia, snow in West Virginia, snow up into the DMV, the Delmarva. And check it out, folks. This is Wednesday night. Storm strengthening big time off the Carolina coast. Ton of rain in Myrtle Beach up through the Outer Banks. Big ice concerns from Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, Raleigh, Greensboro, the Triad in general, back towards Uwaris, Asheboro. I could keep naming towns in North Carolina. You get the point. That's a big ice storm on now 2 models in a row, and a big snowstorm to the north through the mid-Atlantic. And look at the Euro, folks. Bombs this thing out, rides it up the coast. Let's just pause it right here. For any snow lovers in New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Boston, Philadelphia, the Hudson Valley, I mean, go ahead and frame it. This is the one you want. 978 millibar low, wrapping in cold air, blizzard conditions on this run into portions of the Northeast, and then kind of continues and just creates one heck of a nor'easter by the middle and end of next work week, and then pulls out and we calm down by next weekend. It's just one model run, just the European. But I'll tell you, folks, I think it has legs. And I'll quickly show you the Canadian, just again to say we did. Kind of starts the same way, folks. Gets that ice line further south out west into Texas, into Louisiana. Will that happen? Probably I'd lean towards the Euro and GFS right now. The Canadian normally overdoes the cold air and gets a storm a little bit further south than it probably should be. But it shows the same idea. Big ice and snowstorm in the east. Bigger snow for Kentucky, Tennessee. That is a possibility, and I'll show you how that can happen in just a moment. But then still rides the storm up the coast. It's a big nor'easter, blizzard conditions, the whole kit and caboodle. Is that what the saying is, kit and caboodle? Something like that. I don't know. I make up sayings sometimes. Final thing, though, on the models here, but before I look at the upper levels with you, the Euro AI, it's been an incredible model so far. And again, I know this looks like all rain, but you kind of see this little blue line on your map. It's hard to find. This is our 540 line. That's kind of the rain-snow line. And this storm shows the same thing, but one key difference I'll add is right here at the end of its life cycle, or not the end of its life cycle, but as it's pulling away from the Carolinas, check out all of this cold air diving in behind it. This would bring a nice band of snow on the back end pretty far south into the Carolinas. It shows snow in Columbia, Raleigh, Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, heck, even a little bit closer to the coast on this one, and then pulls it up the coast and becomes, again, a big nor'easter like the other models. Just kind of figured I'd show you that one, though, for my snow lovers in the Carolinas. Not to say that that'll happen, but it's still a possibility. It's something that to kind of mention. And I guess that leads us into the overall kind of important thing to note from all of this. Everything I just showed you, they're just models right now. Again, today is Saturday. This will be a Wednesday-ish time frame, kind of Tuesday for areas back out into the plains. So we've got some time to get there. Still a couple of days to fight out the model trends, see what will happen, but all signs pointing to, and the concern increasing for a big snow and ice storm, potentially even blizzard for portions of the eastern U.S. come next week. Now, here's the key to the forecast for you. This is the GFS upper level map. So something new on the GFS, the reason it started to trend a little bit further south with the snow and ice line is it's picking up on the European. Here's the weekend storm. Here's that pocket of cold air behind it. GFS now getting it kind of pulled south and east behind our big storm that's really unfolding now. That's new, so trending towards the Euro. The thing that's still a little bit different is right here. This is Wednesday morning. I'll go ahead and circle a couple areas. Here's our northern stream energy. Here's our southern stream energy. See right here in between, that's kind of some space between that the models are showing, and that is preventing a quicker phase with the storm system on the GFS here. And because of that, we kind of get a weaker storm through Kentucky, Tennessee, and the Carolinas, but then they begin to merge right around the mid-Atlantic, and that's why we get a bigger storm in the northeast, but still just a little too far offshore on the GFS. Now, the European, much prettier picture, shows what you want to see. Here we go, moving it ahead into time. Here's the weekend storm. Again, that pulls that cold air behind it. And then what happens is they already start merging. Our southern stream energy that's going to create our storm next week and the northern stream that's going to provide the cold. I mean, they're already linked up and kind of working in tandem here by Tuesday, Wednesday. So we get a bigger storm already over the plains, and then really begins to kind of deepen and hooks up in kind of a tremendous way for big snow and ice in the Carolinas, Virginia, up through the northeast. You can see this kind of just pulls up the northeast coastline, and that's just a tremendous amount of upper level support for a surface low, and that's why we're getting this thing to bomb out on a lot of the models. All right, final thing I'll show you, snow and ice potential. Well, let's start with ice. This is our latest blend of models, and I've got it kind of bumped up to the higher percentiles here, but I think this is more realistic, especially in the Carolinas. Now, you do see kind of two distinct ice signals, one into kind of, we'll say, Arkansas, southern Oklahoma, potentially as far south as northern Louisiana and Mississippi. That might be cutting it a little bit, but especially this area right into here, watching for ice. Right now, the model's showing, maybe as much as 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. Now, the place I'm more concerned about, that's the Carolinas. I'll zoom in for my friends here to kind of get a look at it. Charlotte, Raleigh, that corridor. I mean, the models have just been hinting and not stopped hinting at big ice potential. Raleigh on this run coming in at 1/2 inch of ice. That would be a big time problem. That would cause power outages. That would cause travel to be impossible. We would get closures for probably a couple of days. By the way, cold air funneling in behind the storm. That'll keep whatever snow or ice is on the ground there for probably a little bit longer than we want it to be. It even shows that ice signal up into Danville and ice all the way back down into Greenville, Spartanburg. And I know you kind of see Oconee, Pickens County get left out here. Climatologically speaking, you would probably also get the ice here, just how cold air damming works. I would be surprised if some of these counties get left out of the, not fun per se because it's ice, but definitely something we're watching. Even a small signal down towards Columbia, but I want you to focus on that red area. That's where we have the highest confidence in a big ice storm come next week. Now, ice is not fun for anybody. Snow is a lot more fun. Who could get snow? Well, a pretty good signal for it here back towards Kansas City, Wichita, Springfield. Already running a mean of nearly 1/2 foot of snow in this area, south of St. Louis through the Ozarks. Even a small snow signal into Arkansas. And then kind of notice again, same thing with the ice. We get a gap in between. Been talking about that. Nashville through Kentucky, up towards Cincinnati. Kind of the storm a little less favorable for you folks, but then beefs up again into the east. Look at Virginia up into the northeast. Move this ahead a little bit further into time, and you can see that snow signal from D.C. back down towards the Charlottesville area, Philadelphia, New York City, up towards Boston, and then kind of misses the down east areas of Maine a little bit. But you get the corridor here of potential big snow and maybe blizzard conditions. Not going to see a blizzard in the Carolinas, but D.C., Philly, New York City, Boston, especially Boston, New York City, Philly, that area. area has the highest potential for seeing a blizzard. Not to say you will, but that's where we've got the highest chance of it happening. Alrighty, folks, that's all I got for you on this Saturday. Again, a busy day ahead, a lot to talk about. I'll be back this afternoon or evening, maybe live, maybe a video. We'll see how the severe weather unfolds, and we'll talk weather. Also, again, if you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, hit the bell for the latest notifications. And once more, thank you to our new members on the channel. I appreciate y'all joining us. And if you want to become a member, go ahead and hit the join button right next to the channel name and consider joining. All right, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, stay warm, and I'll see you all next time.